Hi.
Hey, Alex.
They say, Wassili, that a relationship is about chemistry,
Hmm.
about feelings, is about communication, is about shared experiences.
Hmm.
They also say that opposites attract or complement each other.
Hmm.
And I've been thinking that the real issue with the relationship is that, or relationships,
Hmm.
is that they impact our well-being. They define how happy we are or not,
Hmm.
and they even shape who we are, our identity.
Yes.
And a key question that raises is where the success or failure of relationships is based,
Mm.
actually. So for those that don't know me yet, I'm Alexandra Ευθυμιάδου at NLP Greece,
Hmm.
where we always approach issues with a neuroscientific point of view. And today we have with us Wassili Zafiris.
Hi, Alexander. Nice to meet you again.
Actually, to introduce you a bit, you're half Greek, half
Hmm.
Dutch, right?
Hmm. Yes.
Uh, I know you understand Greek,
I,
although
I,
you
I I do my best.
but yes,
No, no,
although
no. I do my best.
yeah, yeah, I know. So you have an initial background in neuroscience,
Hmm.
25 years of experience as developer, coach, trainer, researcher, and author in the
Hmm.
fields of personal and organizational change. Actually, Wassili, in the past 7 years, has conducted research on neurological insights that impact emotional regulation.
Hmm.
The results of this research are impressive, and Wassili developed the RETaC methodology to work with emotions in relationships.
Yes.
So, as you can see in his background, he's the author of various books. The twice nominated book, let's try it in Dutch. Ik ben niet alleen. I am not alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is
It's the
that?
second one from the bottom in the picture. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It was nominated twice, Best Management and Best Business Book. Yeah. Yeah.
And he also wrote a handbook with the name Happiness is Depressing in 2019.
Yeah.
And of
Handbook for Resolving Depression. Yeah. Yeah.
depression. And of course, your latest book in
Mm.
2024, Relief, which is
Yeah.
about your new neuroscientific research that you translated into a method for personal and relational emotional regulation. And Wassili, he's really eager, and I'm all ears
Mm.
to listen, Wassili, what you have learned, what you have discovered, and what you have experienced out of this
Hmm.
research.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I get straight to the chase with the first
Good.
question.
Let's do that.
People think that one of the most important things in relationships and relationship therapy is
Hmm.
communication.
Hmm.
And I know you have a different view. What is it according to you?
Well, obviously, communication is really important. It's, like the communication, non-verbal communication, physical communication, all these things are extremely important for a good relationship. However, the thing that's actually the juice between relationship, but also the most problematic part of relationships are emotions. And um,
How does emotions come into play and why is the juice, as you mentioned?
well, the interesting thing about it, as you mentioned, my book is about the new neuroscientific research into the emergence of emotions. And one of the key things, there are a couple of key things, but one of the key things is that emotions are not innate to us, which means that we are not born with emotions. Yes, our emotional development actually emerges in our culture of origin, which is a completely different perspective than most of science until today has uh, embraced. Just to elaborate a little bit on what I'm saying,
Please.
let's say, so you are in the Mediterranean, I'm in more in the north in Amsterdam at the moment. These are two different parts of the world, even though we're in Europe, you know.
Mhm.
So that already determines how we experience things in life, you know, and let alone if you live in the Sahara or on the North Pole, yeah. Um, But then again, you could also be born on the countryside or in the city, which are two different experiences. You could be born in a family that has religious tradition or in a family that has none. Or you could be born in an intellectual family or in a labor kind of a family, in a wealthy or a poor family. Then again, you have a father and a mother, a grandfather and a grandmother, a brother and a sister, and so uncle and aunts. And you have some experiences in primary school. And all these experiences together actually comprise of the emergence of our emotions. So we actually learn our emotions through our felt senses in our body. And so our primary intimate relationships, I'm not talking sexually, but our primary intimate relationships are our relationships with our direct caregivers, father and mother. And we learn from them through all kinds of signaling, verbal and nonverbal, energy and whatever, how everything feels. When later in life we merge with somebody else, we connect at a deeper level with somebody else. And you see this very often happen when a loving couple decides to have children or get a child, and suddenly all these feelings from the past come up. And it's actually quite logical because the emotional brain has developed within this intimacy of the past.
Within this context.
Exactly. So it's really natural that when we reconnect in intimacy, and when we have a child, then you have this, let's say, same kind of constellation re-emerging, all our personal feelings of the past come up. And actually, in my experience, there's very little communication that can actually live up to the feelings that come up then.
So how would you explain how does emotion come into play in relationships and why they are so detrimental?
Well, they're so detrimental because this research shows that this emotional regulation has a physiological basis. So not a psychological basis, but a physiological basis. And at the heart, what we have now in our later lives as our emotional regulation system is in essence based on a physiological response to actually manage the energy budgets of our organs. So you got to realize that any changes in our organs changes the energy needs of the organs. And our brain actually is constantly calculating the energy needs of our organs. Why does it do that? The primary reason, the organ needs to survive. So our emotional development, our emotional brain has actually used this system to develop emotions. So now you got to realize that once emotions are triggered, actually the same physiological feedback loop is triggered, meaning that whatever you feel, for the emotional brain will always overrule what you know and understand, because it's actually regulating your physiology.
So it starts with inside, with the changes in our physiology, inside or in biology. And so no matter what happens then, it gets into a specific route, right?
Exactly. And we all know that because everybody I speak to, and you probably know as well, most of my clients, in baseline, that they come to my office and say, well, I know I shouldn't be doing this, but I am doing that. I know I shouldn't be getting angry at my partner, but I am feeling angry at my partner. And so the knowing is actually always undermined by the feeling.
By the feeling, by the emotion. What are some core emotions that influence relationships based on your experience, not only on your...
I stumbled upon a piece of research of the Gottman Institute, which is like one of the leading institutes on relationship therapy in the world. And they did a research with couples to see if they could predict divorce, which I thought was a really interesting research question. And they actually found three critical feelings, and they are: if people don't feel understood, if they don't feel supported, and if they don't feel loved. if any of these three feelings starts to emerge in intimacy or in relationships, then there is a huge chance that within 3 to 5 years, people will divorce.
Unless they have some sort of, take care of this whole thing. I mean, of this whole situation.
Well, the thing about it is, the conclusion that these researchers actually made from this research, which is the obvious conclusion, they said, well, this means that communication is really important. It means that understanding is really important. It means that empathy is really important, which are the things of relationship therapy. Yeah, which is all true. But what triggered me the most is actually the word that was missing from this, because the feeling part, because it's always about people feeling understood, people feeling supported, people feeling loved. So these three feelings are really core in relationships. They are core from the moment we are being delivered on this earth. Just imagine this scenario. From the moment we are born, our caregivers try everything to give us what we need, So let's say if a baby makes noise, maybe it screams. For a parent, the parent is completely oblivious what's really going on with the baby, because the baby cannot communicate in the way we can.
Yes.
So, so the parent, the caregiver, needs to figure out what's going on. And how do we do that? We give the baby something. Food. Still crying? Wasn't food. An extra blanket. Still crying? Oh, it wasn't the temperature. Oh, holding on. But this trial and error is, from my perspective, the basis of a very fundamental feeling. Feeling understood or not.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say if your caregiver gives you what you actually need, what happens to a baby? When a baby's like, and it gets what it needs, what happens to the baby? There's instant relief.
Because the feeling is that finally I've understood.
Exactly. Finally, I'm understood.
Not in a logical way, actually.
No.
It's just a feeling.
Yes.
That notifies the baby that, okay, now I'm safe. I've been
Exactly. So it's the feeling, the interconnectedness between the need, the behavior of the external world, when they are actually met, inside the feeling emerges of relief.
Mm-hmm.
So now, let's say you're lucky enough to have parents who understand you well. Then this feeling of being understood has been satisfied. So then later on, is my experience, there is less of a emotional response when you're not feeling understood. But the problem is we have imperfect parents and imperfect lives. So many of us do not feel understood at a certain moment of time, or not supported, or not loved. So when these feelings start to emerge, we actually start to blame our partners for these feelings.
Yeah, it's been transferred, actually. And
exactly.
Talking about blaming, I know you have a very interesting theory on blaming, which is a really controversial view. I like it. And I would like you to share it with us. Because can you explain it a bit about this controversial view of yours on blaming others?
Yeah. Well, let me first of all say that it's never nice to be on the receiving end of blame. But I think to a certain extent, because there's blame and blame, because you can really be boo, or you can blame your partner for not doing something. But blame is one of the natural emotions that we have. And let me explain why.
Natural emotions, blaming. Okay.
Why is it a natural emotion? When you look at the development of how our emotions emerged from conception to, let's say, 16 or 20 years old, all our emotions and feelings, I think, but surely emotions, emerge in interaction. They don't emerge by themselves, which means that the external world responds to something, and then the emotion is basically woken up. It's actually brought to life within the interaction. You need a stimulus. And so in our situation, that mainly our direct caregivers give that stimulus. Obviously also people around that, but mainly our direct caregivers. And when the stimulus is given, then there's this kind of conditioning that starts to emerge. Oh, when this behavior happens, then I can start to feel this, and then this emotion can emerge. But when something is not given, then the need is still there.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, let's take the example of feeling understood. In order to feel understood, we cannot get that feeling from within ourselves. We need somebody to do the understanding.
We need to receive this understanding.
You need to
produce it by ourselves.
Exactly. So that's what makes relationships so fundamental for our personal development. Because all these feelings are constantly triggered, and they are constantly related to how we've learned or received what we needed in the past. So it goes with the speed of light, but all these feelings are constantly, let's say, related to the present.
So when there is lack of this understanding, then we have blaming.
That's what the purpose is of the blame. You're not giving me something that I need. So in that sense, if you put it really simple, and again, blaming is not a nice thing to experience, but you could also, if you turn the logic around, you could just say, well, give the person what he needs. Well, now it becomes really interesting, because the reason why that is not easy is because, let's say, if one person starts to blame the other person, and these feelings of deficiency come from the person's past, then the blaming will definitely trigger feelings from the past of this person.
Okay.
So they will both start to react from deficiency.
All right. So the person number one does not give for their own personal reasons. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because of their past and so on and so on. The other person wants it desperately. So there's a clash. Really.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. And so I don't have 4 hands, so I can't show you, but you got to imagine that there's this world behind this person of the past, and there's this world behind this person of the past. And these worlds of the past are actually making predictions about what it all means, what's happening. And we all know this because, let's say, if you have an argument with somebody and the argument has happened before, let's say you say, well, you promised to do the dishes or something, or to buy the groceries, but you didn't. And then very soon a conversation could go, oh, there you go again. You've done it again. You're disappointing me again. So what's happening is that people do not talk about the subject anymore. They actually talked about the past. And they're constantly bringing the past into the present.
Okay, so their reaction, be the one side or the other side, comes from previous experiences that have been transferred throughout the years, and we carry them as a bag full of something.
Exactly. Yeah, right? Exactly. And the core of that lies in our childhood. The core of these reactions, because the brain does something really magical. It actually generalizes felt experiences. So it says, oh, this feeling is similar to that feeling, so it's the same. And this feeling is similar to that, and it's the same. And it's continuously proving that what you're feeling is true.
Yeah, because the brain also does work under the principle of least effort. So if something happened and I experienced it in a certain way and I reacted in a certain way, so it just creates a routine. And it says, okay, have I experienced that before? Yes. How did I react? So probably this is the correct thing to do.
Exactly.
So repetition after repetition, but actually you prolong what you initially did.
Exactly. And what is important, Alexandra, is to keep on realizing, I always tell that to my students, that this repetition has no psychological reason. It has a physiological reason. Because the brain is, remember, it's trying to regulate the energy budget. So it has to do that immediately. Because if it's too late, then the organ will fail. Speed is in essence, so generalization is related to the speed of the reaction.
It has to be really fast. Good. That's so interesting. So what we have so far is the underlying principle between for communication and all the other things is emotions indexes, and the other is the key with the blaming.
Yes.
Your view, it has a logic in there. So I have two more questions, Wassili.
Sure.
So
yeah.
What is a core thing everyone can do that will directly impact their relationship?
Okay.
What is the core thing that you have to suggest?
Well, we can combine a couple of things. There are quite a few things you can actually do, and you don't even have to go into therapy for it. You can actually just really start to practice with it. But one or two things that you can actually do, I want to illustrate with an example, just to give you an idea. It's also in my book, because for me, it was an eye-opening, because I was in the middle of my research, and obviously I was working with my clients and practicing. And I wasn't able to fully implement everything in my own personal life yet. And then my relationship ended. This was just before COVID really hit Europe. So we had a lockdown, our first lockdown on Wednesday. And on Saturday, I took my daughter to the beach house. And we decided, it was in the winter. We said, okay, let's go to the beach house. I was getting over this shock. No, I was trying to absorb the shock, basically, of this divorce and the COVID situation and everything. And what happened simultaneously is that my clients, I had big clients, actually called and said, listen, we're going to stop all the training and the coaching now because we don't know what's going to happen. So then I realized, oh my God, divorce, infectious disease, business. So I was in the beach house reading the newspaper. No, I woke up and our dog actually scratched the door. And in my mind, I heard the voice of my ex-wife. Oh, the dog wants to go out. And I felt this like, like you can hear somebody, you can hear this pressing, words of somebody. So I got into the living room and my daughter was playing on the ground and she was building these little houses with mouses and everything. I whispered in my ear, in half an hour or so, or maybe an hour, we're going to go walking with the dog. And then my daughter said this thing, yes, Daddy, I just want to do one more thing. And she went on with her houses. I started to read the newspaper, but in a little while, we're going to walk with the dog. Then after, let's say, 45 minutes, I decided to take a shower. Okay, this is the last time. When I get out of the shower, we're going to go for a walk with the dog. And then she said, yes, Daddy, one more thing. I went to the shower, and right before I got into the shower, I got a text message. A client of mine in capital letters, and capital letters can be like, yelling. We got to talk now. The management team is in turmoil because of COVID. And I was like, it's 11 o'clock on Saturday morning. I'm trying to digest COVID myself. I'm just divorced. My whole life, it feels like it's crumbling. How can you do this? So I went in the shower. Okay, I got to ignore it. So I got into the shower, took a shower, didn't look at my phone, kind of went, okay, I'm going to focus on the day with my daughter and the dog. And as I walked into the living room, my daughter was still sitting there in exactly the same way. And as I did that, she turned around and her eyes were like this, in complete upset. She was completely upset and but she looked at me as if everything I had said before, she didn't hear. Like my reaction came out of nowhere. And her reaction actually really startled me. So I walked back and my research popped up. And I went like, okay, wait a minute. What am I responding to? What am I actually feeling? Because that's what blaming does, you understand? It brings your attention outward. It brings your attention to the person who's not giving you something that you need. So your attention is there, But actually what I did is I went like, okay, what am I actually responding to? And then I very clearly felt, uh-oh, I'm responding to the text message. I'm responding to the voice of my ex. I'm responding to my own desperation, actually.
Or to your own feeling at this point.
And I turned around and I intuitively said to her, listen, honey, I'm really sorry. I am not responding to you. And something magical happened. She actually, her eyes just went like this relief, instantly in her body. And she said, yeah, Daddy, let's go walking with the dog. I realized at that moment, we as people have the power to always release another person from blame. We always have this incredible power. And the only thing we need to do when we react, because we are fallible, which is fine, but when we do react in an emotional way, one of the things that I would invite anybody to do is to take a moment afterwards to check, what am I responding to?
I think that's the key question. Take a step back.
Yeah.
And reflect.
Yes. If you go, what am I responding to? And you feel that something else is going on, then take the courage, admit what happened, and sincerely apologize. Because a sincere apology can mend any pain that you've caused before. So I've become champion in saying sorry. And actually, it's interesting. I'm world champion saying sorry, by the way. So anybody out there who wants to defeat me, be my guest.
But at least when you come to say sorry, at least you know what has happened deep inside.
Exactly. And that actually starts to reconnect you with your experiences from the past.
And what a relief to know that. And now I asked you about, I would consider as a small recipe for us today, but I have one more question for you.
Mm-hmm.
You say relationship therapy or counseling not work.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's quite a statement. Would you like to elaborate it a bit more? Because I know you're doing counseling, but still, you're saying, no, it's not working. How do you go about doing it?
Well, the thing about it, the way it's traditionally done, is my experience, does not work when there's real crisis between couples. Because the problem is, just go Google relationship counseling or therapy, whatever, in whatever language, and you will find, let's say, the 5 pillars. They're all about improving communication, getting more of a perspective of the other person, etc., etc. We all know that. And all these things in themselves are great tools. But when emotions are involved, the past is involved. And it's the unconscious past that's involved. And it's my experience that relationship counseling traditionally doesn't work because it doesn't focus on what's going on with the emotions and how they emerge from the past.
Exactly, what's going underneath the emotions platform that we need to deal with.
Exactly, yeah. So what I do with my clients, when they come to me together the first time, actually their patterns immediately emerge. And then you see one person go sit like this, and the other person, oh, there you go again. Am I not supposed to talk now? Before you know it, this is not about communication. This is about emotion. Communication can help, but what's going on is about emotion.
The underlying principle, the emotion. So I guess do we have some time? Can you give us 2 or 3 minutes so that, because I think this is a very interesting point to share with us about this RETaC methodology. It's dealing with the emotions, not the communication per se.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Would you like to share with us a few things about this RETaC methodology that you developed based on your neuroscientific?
Yeah, sure. Well, what I did, because I have a neuroscience background, so I was able to actually read the technical more details about how the emotional brain creates its emotions. And that led me to a road to start to explore, can I, let's say, reenact this loop in the way I ask questions to people. And I slowly and surely got more and more specific about what questions do I need to ask to get the loop into awareness. So what happened? Where does it come from? What are you kind of predicting? And what are you trying to regulate here? So what's going on?
The loop that causes the emotion?
Exactly. Yeah. Because emotion is actually the emergence from a prediction loop. So just very briefly, so we have changes in our body, which are changes in our organs. They have actually became templates in our past, in our youth. The emotional brain uses those templates to actually give meaning to what we feel right now in this moment, and then makes a prediction about what's going to happen. This is all related to the physiological loop. Something changes in your organs, your brain is calculating how much energy does it need, and your brain starts to predict the energy need and delivers it. Has borrowed this mechanism to say, when something changes here, it means that I'm going to predict that this is going to happen, and here, then the emotion emerges. So ultimately, Alexandra, what we basically do, we base every decision that we make in the moment actually on one criterion. Does it feel good or doesn't it? You've written a thesis, which is like a lot of cognitive work. There's a moment when you know it's finished. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a moment when it feels good enough.
Yeah. How do you know? Yeah, I feel good enough.
It's like, okay, this is it. But that's a feeling.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's
And when you say, well, it doesn't feel right yet, what do? We start to work on it, or we actually dismiss it. Ultimately, we base our decisions on this very fundamental principle. Does it feel right? Doesn't it? If it feels right, I say, yes, I want to be with you. If it doesn't feel right, I say, well, I don't know.
I think it's a huge chapter that you're opening. Okay, let's stop it here because it's going to be more than an hour.
Okay, yeah, there's enough to say about this. Yeah.
We could produce follow-ups based on this, on specific issues based on relationships and emotional regulation. What do you think?
Definitely, that could be a great idea. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you for having me here, and I hope your viewers in Greece and around the world will really take away something from this, because you know how passionate I am about this work. I actually believe that this is a really important contribution to relationship work and actually individual emotional regulation. So I hope a lot of people will be inspired and eager to learn more about this.
And I'm a big fan of your work. I mean, I proved it by just attending your programs.
Definitely, yeah.
Certification programs on RETaC.
Yeah.
Yes, it's unique.
You're one of the few at this moment in Greece who actually has the experience of the RETaC practitioner at the RETaC practitioner level. So I'm really curious what your group is going to do with all of this.
We're discussing representing you here in Greece.
Great.
Thank you, Wassili.
Yeah, thank you, Alexandra, and I'll talk to you soon.